hell are you?
What did you do with Ashley?
Director Greg Simon brings us Captive, a vampire movie that stars Scout Taylor-Compton and Brendan Fear. So this is a low-budget movie made for the streaming service Tubi, and is kind of a stoners meets vampires movie, I guess you would say. It focuses on a group of friends who break into this house which the owners are going to have gone away for the weekend. And they basically are going to want to use the facilities, get stoned, drink, etc. But whilst they're in the house, they discover that there's actually someone being held captive and chained up in the kind of like the basement area. And this guy may well be a vampire. Of course, they don't know that at that point. So they probably, you know, as most people would do, obviously set the guy free. And this obviously causes a vampiric menace to the group. Now, what will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what we think works with Captive. So it's kind of a somewhat one location movie. But what I mean is one location, is one building. I mean, it's not like one room necessarily. So it all takes place more or less within this kind of one house. So it's a somewhat self-contained movie. You know, all kind of shot in interiors and things like this. What works in this film? Okay, so I mean, it's got a high body count. So those of you who want to see lots of people going to get murdered by vampires, this is a movie that you'll probably enjoy, because yes, I was surprised this one does have quite a high body count, and some of the kills are relatively kind of brutal. People kind of getting their jugulars ripped open and blood kind of splurting all over the place, things like that. Although put a pin in the blood, because I suspect this may be a somewhat a contentious issue. The cast are all kind of like young and attractive. Scout Taylor-Compton certainly becoming somewhat of a kind of scream queen in recent years, showing up in, you know, every 1 in 3 horror movies, it kind of feels like. At least she's not playing a teenager in this one. She's in her 30s, you know, so you know, the cast are kind of like, you know, American daytime sort of TV kind of, that kind of like look and stuff like this. The film has a kind of glossy, like kind of feel to it, is the best way I would kind of describe it. Brendan Fear, who you may know from the many TV shows, including Roswell, I believe it was. Small role, but you know, it's nice to see him turn up in a movie like this. He's done his own vampire movies, of course. You know, it's a simple, basic vampire movie that I think takes inspiration from other vampire movies. It attempts to have somewhat of a romantic plot, I suppose, or a little bit of a seduction kind of style thing. I don't think it necessarily all completely works, but you know, there is that sort of connection between two sort of characters that run through the film. Our main guy, vampire, looks across between Eric Northman from True Blood and Eminem. Yeah, so it's an interesting character to a degree, and I have to say I actually felt it ended pretty strong. It ends with a little bit of a left turn. I wouldn't say necessarily a twist, but a little bit of a left turn, and I thought, no, that's actually a reasonable kind of, you know, a reasonable ending where I feel it introduces a new fold. And you know, it's kind of like, in a way, I actually would have liked to have seen more of what it introduced at the end, to be brutally honest. But then I thought it ended on a high, so let me put it like that. What doesn't work? I mean, it's a very glossy sort of like some vapid movie. I have to say, very sort of surface level. It's kind of the best way I describe it. The plot is kind of, it's very simple. The characters aren't particularly kind of fleshed out and somewhat kind of vague. The acting's a mixed bag. I feel our main vampire guy is a little hammy at times and comes across as a little kind of like, I don't know, clunky, cheesy kind of, you know, the reading of the dialogue and things like that. The issue with the blood, I mean, they've chosen to use kind of CGI blood, and it's very obviously kind of CGI blood as well. Now, I have mixed feelings about it because it's an easy thing to kind of moan about, but I gotta say, you know, at least they went full tilt on it. There's gushings of blood that sort of comes out and it sprays out fast and stuff like that. Yeah, it does look CGI, but I thought at least they've kind of like tried to make it look violent, I suppose. There is that. I mean, there's a little bit of kind of like obvious use of CGI tweaking here and there, like the eyes and stuff that are glowing. It's again, it just looks like a little bit of like cheap kind of CGI, things like this. And you know, it's just somewhat of a forgettable plot at the end of the day. There's not a lot to it. As I say, it's not a particularly expansive movie. It's really just taking place in one kind of address, this kind of massive house and things like that. And you know, people acted somewhat of a stereotypical way. So it kind of ends up being watchable, but ultimately forgettable. This is not going to be one of Scout Taylor-Compton's more memorable horror films, I feel. But if you're a vampire movie and you don't mind a little bit of kind of trashy, sort of cheesy vampire action, you know, if you like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, stuff like that, I guess this is the equivalent of a vampire film. 5 out of 10, it's just kind of somewhat of an okay throwaway vampire film. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please leave me a comment and I'll look forward to see you next time.